But with
the
that,
general feeling.
let's get into the big news of the day, and that is the talk of the town. Hollywood is in panic, and of course they're saying, "See, we told you Trump was going to ruin us and ruin the world." So the movie industry is shocked and confused after Trump says he'll put 100% tariffs on films produced outside the US. This is nuts. All right, so now there's been a couple updates to this story. I am just fresh to this. So somebody's going to have to get me up to speed on this, just like some people in the audience. So who do I hand this to? Andre, are you up to speed on this?
I've been traveling all day, so I think that we handle this thing to Scribe. You have no excuse. You're up to this. What's going on?
We
Okay,
had
so
script here earlier. Unfortunately, he had to leave.
yeah, so Trump put a thing out on Truth Social the other last night saying that he wanted to put 100% tariffs on movies that were not produced in the United States to try to encourage more, movie making in the United States. However, outside of that effective declaration, there was no clarification exactly what qualifies as a production made outside the United States because again, as I said before, the super chats, it's like, well, if I film the entire thing in Utah, but then I farm out my effects to a house in the UK, does that qualify as a outside of the United States production? So many moving parts of movies these days is not all done in the United States, even if it is a production company that's headquartered within. So there's so much ambiguity
I have
to this.
another example there.
Mhm.
Let's say that you have a movie that is mostly filmed in the US, but then you have a couple of scenes that require exotic locations. Say, for
Exactly.
instance, that you are filming Dune, and there's literally no dunes which are majestic enough in the continental United States that you can get away with them. Or say that you're filming Superman and you need the Fortress of Solitude, and again, even Alaska in winter doesn't quite cover it, or you need an alien landscape, and there's nothing quite like like Greenland or Iceland in the United States. So you need one of these scenes filmed outside of the US.
We're
Say
gonna
you
buy
have
one of
10,
them anyway.
15% outside. Yeah, of course, you can buy Greenland, so that will take
Yay.
care of that. But
Sorry,
but Iceland may be a bigger challenge.
Yeah, I know. No, yeah, that's a good question, and that's the bigger question, I guess, is how is this going to work?
Yeah, well, the stocks dropped on a whole bunch of production companies just overnight, apparently as a result of this, because all of a sudden you have Netflix and Paramount and all these other companies, and Disney as well. They all dropped a couple of points.
Especially Disney, because they film like all of their Star Wars output.
I was just going to say, all of the three companies you just mentioned, yeah, I was just going to say, of the three companies you just mentioned, they're the ones who film the most shit outside the U.S., and that's how Netflix circumvented all the COVID shit years ago, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the problem is that Trump has made this declaration in a very ambiguous way, and nobody's quite sure how it's supposed to work or what the conditions would be on it or how you would qualify or disqualify yourself. So it's all very up in the air. But of course, when you do something like that, you make uncertainty, and that's why the stock market has reacted this way. It's like all of a sudden, all these movies in production or things where they now going to be, or things planned to be in production in the near future, are they suddenly now at risk of having their costs jump through the roof?
I mean, without knowing exactly how it works, I'm imagining it's going to be like most productions are now. Like, okay, to qualify for a lot of these, like say Canada, and Paul, you could probably jump in here and help me with this. To do a production in Canada, if through a U.S. studio, you're required to hire X amount of crew and cast that are Canadian to qualify for said tax break, right? So I'm assuming it's something that will go the other way around. So X amount of your production and all that kind of stuff has to be in the U.S. You could probably get away with doing maybe 20% outside the U.S. and not get bombarded with the same kind of 100% tax or whatever. But I don't know if Paul has anything to add to that from the other perspective of that.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be percentage based, just like you said, and they'll use Hollywood accounting to try to get it as best they can. But a movie like Mission Impossible, what are they going to shoot everything in Georgia now? The thing I'm most worried about is, doesn't Trump know that the people in Hollywood are really going to not like him after this? I mean, he's really risking his reputation.
Oh man, gosh, they'll hate him.
Well, the bigger question here
all
is,
the people that already hated him.
You mean all the
About his
people that have
ambassadors.
secretly, have gone to him and
MAGA,
said,
yeah, the MAGA
Yeah.
contingency in Hollywood. Oh man,
no, not the MAGA contingency.
Let Andre finish his point here, because then we have
okay.
another guest
All right.
joining us. Actually,
Yeah,
sorry.
I was about to say, I would think that Stallone and Foyt and Gibson would be able to set Trump straight on some of this.
This
he
is
appointed them ambassadors, didn't he? I mean, you think that
this was Voight's idea
on this?
yeah,
No,
this was their idea.
This was Voight's idea, Andre. The rumor is that John Voight is the one who pushed this in the first place and convinced Trump to go this way.
No,
Well,
you guys.
And movies like Working Man, I'm sure that was shot in America.
What do you got to say, Paulie?
No,
What's
man,
up?
Mike's here. I'm good. Good.
Okay.
No, what are you going to say? You were going to say something.
I'm
You were gonna
good. Mike's here. Let's.
All right,
move
Mike's
on.
here.
I want to know. I'm not going to say anything until I know what Paulie had to say.
Oof.
Happy Gringo de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo. It's a little early for us to be drinking, but Mexican I can make. If someone wants to send a smoking hot chick to my room, I can start early.
Hell yeah.
I do want to report to the fans. I was supposed to be in a 2-day audit here in Houston, all day Monday, all day Tuesday, and half a day Wednesday, and the agent already released me.
Yeah, he told me he was going to be locked up. I
that's
tried getting
great
him
news.
yesterday.
Anyway, Paulie, what were you going to say about all this?
Yeah, no, this is what I was gonna say is the wokest of woke, people that you can imagine have been going in secret to Trump to save this industry. That's all I was gonna say.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's not a rumor. It's not. That has happened. That is happening, and and this is not an overnight thing. This is not like, oh my God, he did what? The reality is that this has been a runaway industry for decades now. It is absolutely ridiculous. It's been ridiculous. It's already a tough industry to even etch out a living. So I fully applaud this, and I think this is fantastic. This has to kick the asses of these state governors to get tax incentives, but also to just create a federal tax incentive for productions. Let's get this going, man. We need to make movies here in America. That's how it used to be for so long.
Yeah.
That's for so long.
So you think this encourages domestic production and counters sort of foreign incentives that everybody?
Well, I think it's going to have to.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it for a minute. One of the reasons Stallone left California, he's one of the people that left California. I'm sure he would love to go back.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is Hollywood used to be the hub, and that's why all these movie stars live there. And Paulie's right. I've heard, of actors complaining is like, why the fuck do I live in Hollywood when I work 90% of the year outside of the U.S. or outside of my home state or way away from my home?
In Canada. Right.
In Canada.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And you're right, because 90% of the TV shows now are made in Canada.
Yep.
Fucking most productions are made elsewhere. You've got but there are places in the U.S. that are trying to build studios, trying to get production back into the U.S. And I think that's a good thing. And I agree with you. You got to get incentives in here. Trump needs to get out there and say, yes, not only are you going to get X amount if you shoot in the U.S., you're going to get double that if you shoot in Hollywood. Right? Or California or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that'd be huge. Because Hollywood, from what I understand, has lost a ton of work to Vancouver.
Well, and it's all because of the taxing, right? Because, and I'm sure Paulie can back me up on this, because that's part of the problem. The beauty of California is that you have almost every single atmosphere you can think of within 10, 15, 20 mile radius drive, right? Like that's why they used to make movies out there all the time, because you could have a desert, and then 20 minutes you could drive, you could have a forest, and then 20 minutes down the road you could drive and you could have a big old clean lake and all this other, and it was always, the weather was decent. You didn't have to worry about all the bullshit all the time you have to deal with in the mountains or anywhere else where you're filming and shooting stuff, where you constantly have to worry about, weather conditions and all this other bullshit. None of that is an issue in California. But what became a problem was the taxes. But go ahead. Sorry, Paulie.
No, even if you look at just our United States, we got every terrain there is. I just sent you guys some info in the private chat just on dunes. Look at all those films that have been filmed outside of Yuma, Arizona.
Well, on that note, there's very few movies where there's an actual real good excuse that they went outside the U.S. just for specifically the look of the place. Like the good example I can think of is Lord of the Rings, right? Why did you have to shoot New Zealand? Because that's one of the only places in the world that still looks like old England does, that isn't built, that doesn't have power lines, that doesn't have all, like that made sense, right? That's why.
Yeah.
You can do that once in a while, but not everything has to be that way. Go ahead. Sorry, Paul. You had more.
No. So I definitely this is a problem, and it's not. It affects every single person in the industry, in front of, behind the camera, high and low, blah blah blah. But that being said, there is some details like, well, what do you mean? Like, how does this going to work practically? If a U.S. production is filming like Doomsday, Avengers, and in England, and is it a UK production because it has a UK production office set up, Mikey? For the taxes, so technically it's not a US production. They're gonna have to clarify a lot of that stuff.
Well, not just that, you're running the risk of a tariff war. So I mean, are we going to start getting tariff for our stuff overseas? They're already the industry's already reliant on global.
Well, we already have situations where, like in China, there's only so many movies
Yeah,
allowed.
but I would argue
like
that unlike consumer goods, a tariff war about entertainment is largely irrelevant. I mean, seriously, we're gonna is there a battle internationally, Chris, going over like Indian movies? I don't think so.
No, but I think it's kind of risky since the film or the movie cinemas tickets consumers, it's already low. I mean, it's down what 40% from, or maybe 30% from the pre-COVID days. I don't know if this is going to.
I think we need to take a macro look at this thing because there's a lot of productions, a lot of movies that are delivered in theaters as well as on streaming services that are filmed overseas for tax benefits. I'm going to go back to what Paulie said. I've heard for a long time that not only conservatives in Hollywood wanted something to happen like this, but a lot of the hypocritical Democrats in Hollywood wanted this too. I've heard that for years, that they wanted something like this too. And only recently have you heard some of the people that, whether they're Democrats or Republicans in Hollywood, speak up. There was a recent interview that you had with Ben Affleck. You all saw that. I think you talked about it on Midnight's Edge or Midnight's Edge After Dark, one of the shows.
I think Matt Damon, I think is what you're referring to.
Yeah, sorry, Matt Damon.
Yep.
No, Ben Affleck also talked about it as well.
Okay,
they both did.
Okay,
and so the point of it is that it goes back to what the reason Hollywood was such a great place way back when was that New York did cost a lot, and people came out to the Wild West to film a lot of this stuff. The Wild West ground zero was Hollywood. Now Atlanta and Canada were the first two places, regional centers, to take money away from Hollywood. Then that expanded to England, and now everybody has incentives to do stuff outside of California, where the costs are literally 10 to 20 times the cost of anything, because it's basic. So I think something dramatic like this is needed. I applaud it. I think it's fantastic. I don't even give a shit that my Disney stock goes down or that other studio stock goes down, because it's not about what the investors want. It's what the line people need that are what are called below the line people. I mean, how many people in that make up the most of the economic force in Hollywood are the set builders, the actors that work on a daily basis, people like Paulie's girlfriend, not these high level falutin, Class A stars.
They pay the most taxes too, right?
Yeah, I mean, these people
oh my God,
is that W-2 employees that get paid through the unions pay a frackload of taxes.
Right, so, and a lot of the big stars, they don't even live in California anymore. They moved out.
Absolutely not. And
no,
so
they don't live
like this is needed for the production staff, the writers, the graphics people, the editors, all of the people to otherwise this industry is dead. And for whatever reason, we can do stuff overseas all day and night. But I saw someone make a comment in chat, which is that the more that we produce stuff for an international, global, and I'm going to say it, leftist, ridiculous agenda, then the further away we get from the classic moral lessons that Hollywood used to give us about individualism, rugged Americanism and the ideals that the entire planet used to aspire to be like here, that were promoted by the American film industry, which more recently have gone to the wayside as woke infestation has taken over the hive mind of all these leftist liberal dipshits. So I applaud this. I think this is great, and I hope the stocks continue to tank. And I hope that I hope that Canada loses a ton of money, and I hope that New Zealand does, Australia, and especially the United Kingdom.
This is just another example of certain sectors in the American market where there's such good capitalists that they need protection because of their own incompetence and self-inflicted inability to compete. This is 100%. This is not Chinese cheap labor over American labor. This is 100% abdication of their own businesses.
That's right. And
yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
That is a brilliant way of putting it, Chato, because essentially what's happened is that the creative integrity and brilliance that was seeded in the Western world, in the US and Canada, has now been cheapened and sold to various places on the planet, all for what? Tax credits. And what's the net result of the product that we've got? The net results are that Hollywood actors and Hollywood industry people are out of work and suffering. And number two, the quality of what we see on our TV screens or in our movie theaters sucks.
So let's give you an example of that, right, guys?
That's not due to offshoring, though.
Let's give you an example of that, guys, in the chat, right? What does that mean? What they'll do is they'll take a production that was here and they'll go and film it out of the country. And you have to, to get your tax breaks, you have to do so many local hires on every level.
That's what I was talking about before. Yeah,
I know you were, but I'm going to add to this is that what Hollywood will do, though, is that they'll actually go through the audition process, production process, and see who they can get here, then go and lowball over there in fucking Canada. And yeah, I said it, over there in fucking Canada. Don't give a shit. And then they'll find lower asses to do that, to do those jobs, and then they'll leave those people who had thought they had gotten the job out in the wind. They're screwed. American jobs.
It doesn't help.
It's happening. It's been happening, and it happens every day.
It doesn't help that the governor of California put some edict together that required studios to get tax credits in California to follow a hard DEI regime. This is all self-inflicted.
Yeah, this puts pressure on Gavin Newsom, I think, in a big way.
Well, that's another part of the conversation, right? Because here's the thing. It's Hollywood's done this before, and it's like they didn't learn their lesson. Do you guys remember 20 years ago when they started filming everything in Australia? They started moving everything to Australia, and then this basically happened. All the unions and all the people started griping, so then they moved everything back here. But then this is when all the other production companies started opening in Georgia and all these other places this facilities did. But you
know what?
Chato's
right. Listen, Chato's on point, man, because I'm running through our experiences with casting, with productions, that will go and do the casting or do some of the hiring practices here. Then we'll go to Louisiana. Then we'll go to Atlanta.
Right.
Then we'll go to New Mexico. It used to be New Mexico, Texas. And you're absolutely right, Chato. In other states have better tax incentives. That's other states.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a horror film last night, and half of it was filmed. More than half of the film was filmed in Colombia. Things set in New York City.
This is what I was getting at, is that when they've done it before, they brought it back, but then instead of coming back to Hollywood is when they started coming to Georgia and Arizona and all these other states instead of coming back to Hollywood.
I mean, Sound of Freedom was what, Fox Columbia?
Yeah, well, and this is nothing new. They used to shoot a lot of cheap movies back in Romania back in the day, and
yeah, it's not nothing new, but we have to compete. We have to compete, and we have to, just like we would because I think the DEI stuff is like the last of the shit, because this has been going on for a while.
Well, that's what's preventing people now from coming into Hollywood. That's what I think you guys are saying more so, at least my interpretation, because here's the thing. This is why Trump is retaliating, because Newsom's like, oh yeah, you can get these tax breaks as long as you adhere to these DEI incentive programs kind of thing, right? But at that point, then people are like, well, fuck that. I'll just go shoot somewhere else, right?
What I meant was like the last 10 years now have been the active DEI, which has been the death of all.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
A lot of what we're seeing and hearing. Absolutely. But this has been going on for decades and decades. But yeah.
And it was started with the 1980s writers' strike.
The 88 strike.
Yeah, the 80s writers' strike. That's really when this thing kicked into gear, because Hollywood would never do a lister project outside of the United States or Los Angeles unless it was on location.
Yeah, you're right. The only big movies that used to shoot like that were like more independent features, like the George Lucas features. He'd always go over to the UK, right? But like, you're not wrong. Like, it is more of a last 20, 30 years thing. And like I said, I kind of remember it started when they started doing all these productions in Sydney and all these other places in Australia. And it's like, and it was just over the tax incentives. That's it.
Yeah, the only thing they had to remember when they were doing The Matrix is to flip the film over so the cars are driving on the right side of the road.
He's
Yeah,
not
speaking
half
on
wrong.
the right and the wrong side of
Well,
roads,
the
I think
Matrix
that's
movies
very
built
wrong.
Australia a big freeway thing, didn't they? Basically,
Yeah, and the
Well,
thing,
I don't know that they got to keep that.
I
again,
think they did.
once again, the only thing that I object to this of many tariffs that Trump has been thinking of is that this is 100% self-inflicted. That Toronto has been building Pinewood-sized
Pinewood,
studios.
yeah.
So I mean, it's more than just. I mean, right now, what are we? 65 cents on the dollar. I mean,
Right.
that's another incentive to do your productions here. But the Georgia and all these different places have been investing in improving facilities, whereas Hollywood stopped.
Yeah, and we have to lose Scribelight, but you're 100% right, because that's part of the reason why most television moved to Canada is because the dollar was cheap. They could get more for the dollar, basically.
Yeah, basically. And now we have these mammoth studios, and one of the reasons for shooting up here is logistics.
Yeah. So Scribe, you got to leave us, so why don't you go ahead and plug your business?
Sure. At 12:30 p.m. today, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, I got my show DEI Death Watch. Did you know that we have segregated racial graduation ceremonies that are still going on because we have to own Trump by continuing on with demonstrably racist things in colleges and universities?
Well,
if
we got to watch out for you people.
oh, I see how it is. Well, anyway, so if you'd like to find out more about that and a couple other things I got going on, I'll have that on
do you
at
mean, you
12:30.
people?
What do you got against Cinco de Mayo graduation tacos with
And Mikey, you're white.
Oh.
Oh.
Well, but that will be after. Polly, you have something that happens just before that, don't you?
Yeah. I'll redirect. It's going to redirect to you, brother.
Okay. But so otherwise, everybody have a good rest of your Monday. Nice to talk to everybody. Nice to see you, Mexican Iron Man. I don't get often enough to see you on here, and very informative stuff. Nice to hear from you. And Polly, Paul, Tom, Andre, and the Absent Culture. Everybody have a good Monday, and I'll see you on Wednesday.
See you, Scribe.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.
I got to bail out too. If you
All
guys
right,
don't
Chris.
mind, I'll take the exit ramp.
Sure.
We've got I don't know if you guys heard of that documentary, Beneath London, the story of alien war, but we are showing that documentary for free in the next few minutes on Bleeding Fool. It's about basically one of those immersive events that happened for the Alien movies. Sigourney Weaver came out and Lance Henriksen in London, and it was one of those walkthrough tour things. It's actually a pretty cool documentary. And then in the morning, we're posting on Bleeding Fool despite Revenge of the Sith getting a re-release for its 20th anniversary. Let's face it, the prequels still suck, and Star Wars is only those first three movies. So, guys, I'm at Bleeding Fool or at Chris Brawley. Mexican Iron Man, man, what a treat! I don't think I've been on here with you on here, I think it's always been some lame excuse why you can't join us. So
yeah, like I need some lame excuse like I need to represent a client before the IRS.
You mean like work? In other
Yeah.
words, yeah, like job type job. I got you.
Shockingly, I've decided to not become a YouTuber as a career vocation. Shocking.
That's I'm just a special guest. That's all I've ever ranked.
You should hear some of the shit he says about YouTubers.
Oh yeah,
and he had a good time.
Thanks,
good to finally be on a stream with you, Mike. And
love your work, love your website, love your work, and I love watching you. And if it makes you feel better, getting to listen to you on this show is another great reason I get to be a listener and not a participant. I'm like, Chris is going to be there.
That's where he started.
Yeah.
He started in the audience where he was all banged up and beaten up, and like a gang beat him up over a woman, something like that.
You gotta look out,
attraction.
Mikey. You gotta look out, Mikey, for Chris, man. He can get a little gangster on us.
It's a little spicy. It can get
little
spicy. But what better day to be spicy than Gringo de Mayo, right?
Yeah,
exactly, man.
Well, take care of yourself, Chris.
Later,
Thank
fellas.
you for being here.
Take care, Chris.
Bye, Chris.
Speaking of Mikey, look how good this man looks.
Yeah,
what are you doing that?
amazing today.
Like
Zenfit, baby.
He is my goal. I want to be as good looking as Mikey at this point. That's
3
my goal.
workouts a week with Paulie for 18 months, provided the foundation, and I'm back to working out with him again now the last 2-3 months. I took about a year off, went into some heavy cardio, and then we're back. And now my goal is to drop another 20 and get my
Tone
next.
it up. We're gonna tone it up,
Wow.
man.
Yeah, we got to tone it up now. I think I still got to lose some weight. I think I'm still a little too fat, but
Yeah,
Well,
got-
physical
we got,
therapy sets me free. I'll be bugging Paulie. So
Yeah, maybe a couple fewer pizzas, and you'll be on your way. We love you.
Paulie, he doesn't
Pizza's
eat like
good.
that anymore. He doesn't eat pizza, and he doesn't eat ho-hos, and he
I
doesn't.
meant you, Mike.
I don't eat pizza either.
You're eating pizza tonight.
Well, that's with Loki. When's the last time? Look,
Don't
fucker,
any
when's
of
the
you
last time
tell
I
him.
ate pizza?
I'm just
if
giving
you
you a
tell
hard time,
him,
Mikey.
I will come.
And by the
kick
way,
your
I've been fasting
asses.
all day.
Nice, like Mikey.
I like how
has
Paulie
this-
gives me
he
shit
has
when
this
I'm his
exterior
number
of being
one
the biggest
success.
tough guy, right? And then you say one little thing, and it all falls apart.
All right, let's get back to these tariffs because we have a little bit more I want to get into with Mikey here because he's the tax man. He even has his own Beatles theme song. So yeah. So do you think this is going to work, Mike? Do you think this was a good move? You said this was a good move. So let's get into the logistics of this a little bit more. So how do you think that they're going to be able to implement this kind of a thing through the actual tax side of things and how they're going to make it work?
Well, I think there's at least a couple ways to look at this. One of which Paulie started to mention in his comments, which is that here's the angles to this. One angle is that this is like a lot of things that Trump does in general, which is what drives people nuts in large measure, is that this is, who knows if this is really going to happen or not. A lot of times Trump says stuff and does stuff just to encourage action to be taken. And so let's just start with case scenario number one, that it's just a veiled threat and that nothing actually ever happens. That being said, let's go
So
to
he's not really going to turn the car around.
I'm just saying, like, he may or may not. But let's just say that, and on that basis, I think it's great to shake up the market, the industry, and to get people thinking. Because one thing we do know about Trump is that he does execute on a hell of a lot of his promises, and when he does execute, it's pretty brutal. When he executes and how he executes, and if anything, it needs to be brutally beaten around. It's the way Hollywood runs, in my opinion. But that's one. My next reaction would be, how would this work? Well, I think what it does is it puts the ball in some people's ballparks, which you guys have already started to talk about, and I've gotten a couple of texts as I've been on the show. Gavin Newsom, what is Gavin's response going to be to all this? Because essentially what happened, if we go back and review our news stories related to Hollywood, tariffs, tax incentives, and so forth, is that our man Gavin Newsom, a guy that Paulie and his colleagues in California look up to. See how I came back around the corner, Paulie, and I hit you with that one? Pow, pow. No. A guy like Gavin Newsom has turned his back. He's been a huge hypocrite to Hollywood. On the one hand, he's tried to make it like he's friends of Hollywood, and these Hollywood people have sucked up to him. But in reality, he hasn't done much. And in particularly, just 2 or 3 months ago, he had the opportunity to really push for some major incentives that I thought would have really provided some leadership from an economic base that would have benefited Hollywood actors, benefited people below the line, and made good on some economic promises that might get that region to work again, which, by the way, LA has been devastated. It's been devastated by people that live in LA. You know, I may give it a lot. I may make a lot of crass jokes a lot about California and LA, but to live in LA in the entertainment industry has been a constant barrage and siege of attack from a tax standpoint, from a homeless standpoint, from an economic opportunity standpoint. It's just been brutal for people. And Gavin had the chance to do something major, and he didn't. He basically did what he usually did. He announced like there's going to be a special little tax credit program. The dollar amount isn't significant. It sure as hell wasn't even 30% of what Georgia does right now. I mean, like if you look at the numbers, it was like 26% of what Georgia does on an annual basis. California was going to do the next 3 years. And so Gavin had a chance to be a real leader here in this. And he didn't. And yet all these Hollywood people are Gavin's best buddies. And I'm very disappointed in Gavin Newsom, because if I would think that, although I think he's a piece of crap and a piece of sack of shit, and I hate the motherfucker for making me want to leave the state, I do think that him and his little besties out of the Hollywood industry could at least team up on saving Hollywood, which he, by the way, has the ability. Because let me tell you about Gavin Newsom. If Gavin Newsom can go to the assembly, which he controls in the Senate, and get tens or hundreds of millions of dollars in order to approve, or billions of dollars for homeless encampments, he can sure as hell make some tax credit incentives that'll make Atlanta look like a second-rate movie studio. But he doesn't. So now this puts the ballpark on the ball in the park of Gavin Newsom. Look, Trump's willing to put 100% tariff on the entire planet to bring the movie industry back to America. Gavin, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?
That's the point. And
frankly, Paulie's on point. I've heard for years that there are some people that vote Democrat that are leftists. But they've been talking to people in the Trump administration. I've heard that for 2 years. So I'm not surprised that Paulie says that it's not just some conservative actor or two that have been named at some special commission. I heard that from people that I know that work in the industry.
I mean, it's now more than ever. I'm hearing it from who. It's shocking who I'm hearing it from. Which is good. Good.
In terms of how this goes, let's go to the mechanics, which is what Tom was really asking. That's the third level, right? So I talked about the PR value. In my second commentary, I talked about the political value and the political. Now let's talk about the concrete, tactical of how this would work. Concrete and tactical, you have two issues. Where is the company based out of legally? And where is the money spent, and how is that going to be tracked? Those are the two things that matter. How are we going to track where the company is based and where the money? And let me give you an example. We have the cruise ship industry where Disney makes a ton of money, but all of these cruise ships, guess what? They're flagged in foreign ports. Because they're flagged in foreign ports and they're foreign entities, they are not subject to the local, state, and federal tax that an American-based company, like if I owned 10 cruise liners and I was in Port Everglades and I had a Florida or a Georgia corporation, I'm coming out of Savannah or whatever, my tax basis is completely different than if I'm a foreign corporation. Because when you're a foreign corporation, you only have to report your U.S. income. And what they do is they say that since these foreigners are embarking on a port that is international, they have left the United States, and now that money that they're making on that cruise ship is no longer U.S. money.
Okay, because that was going to be my next kind of question is how does this compare to something like, say, when Legendary was involved with like China, for instance, so they could get their movies in over in China? Is it something like that, or is it a little more different? Because clearly you can have a company that's based somewhere, but unless you're making the movie in Hollywood, that's what it seems like the incentive is based on more so than where the company is based. But yeah, that was going to be one of my questions too.
Everything about making a movie in Hollywood is subject to the insanity that's California. No one talks about the cost of electricity to make a movie in California. The cost of permits to try to resize a studio can take a decade to do. They have done everything in their power to make Hollywood an impossible place to work. Let me give you an example. I can't remember what state it was in, but one of the Chinese battery companies tried to set up with, I think might have been the insistence of Trump at the first round of creating one of their businesses and bringing it over from China to the United States, and they gave up because of the regulations are important. But when you get to the point where the regulations exist only to give jobs to bureaucrats, then you're in trouble. And by way of that example, so they gave up after trying to build a big plant after 3 years. Hungary, I just found out, BYD, which is the biggest, now the biggest Chinese electric car company in the world, who also makes the batteries, I believe, for Tesla. They started building a plant in Hungary in the beginning of 2024. They will have enough of it finished by the end of 2025 to start manufacturing cars. They started it in 2024. They're going to be almost done in 2025. They're going to be manufacturing 200,000 cars a year in Hungary. And so, okay, what kind of arm twisting is going on, and what kind of regulations are they not following? But on the other hand, we're dealing in the modern world, and you can't pollute the world anymore the way they used to in the past. It does no one any good to not be
unless you're in China, then you can totally do that and worse. But in Europe, you can't do that.
No, Europe is the same problem as the United States. As the United States touts itself as being more open than Europe, it's actually not the case.
Exactly. I'm just talking about the pollution in particular. Like, you have so many restrictions in both the US and in Europe, some of which are good. China could do whatever the hell you want. Screw the environment. That's the only point I was making.
Right, but they've picked Hungary because of space and tax reasons and everything else. And
absolutely.
And America's choking itself. And some of these tariffs, unfortunately, are protecting inefficiency and the lack of investment in their own businesses.
Yeah,
America has the lowest per capita tariffs assessed to foreign countries of any country.
I'm not talking about that.
No, but you also brought up a good point earlier, Paul, is that
you're right,
this
Mike.
isn't like any other typical industry being tariffed. Like, you don't have specific.
Steel.
Exactly. Like, it's not a tactile thing to where it's like.
No.
And not only that, I mean, there's other people bringing up other things. Well, what about piracy? What about the fact that films are distributed digitally and stuff like that anymore? And it's like, yeah, but this has more to do with the production of and the making
put it
of.
this way, these tariffs might actually and probably will affect foreign film manufacturing. But as Mikey said, unless Newsom gets his act together and fixes California, not just the incentives for doing movies in Hollywood, no one's going to be making movies in Hollywood. It's all going to be in Georgia.
Right?
Well, and I agree.
100%. Let's say one more thing, Tom, real quick.
Sure.
Is at a macro level, I think what Paulie and Paul have been saying in their comments these last few minutes is really important at a macro level, because here's why. The industry that fuels Northern California is tech. And what do we know about how California has been run and what it's done to the tech industry? Tech industries have left.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to the tech industry in Northern California, shockingly, oil and gas was a major industry. And guess what? The two major companies that were in Northern California have either left or just announced that the second one is leaving. Chevron.
Wow. Right.
Okay. We go to Southern California. If I ignore San Diego for a minute, which is largely a military-based community in large measure, and the infrastructure around supporting that and a few related other industries like tourism, if I look at Los Angeles in general, if it loses the stronghold on entertainment, which it has been doing, I think the entertainment industry in Southern California, which is one of the 2 or 3 major industries of the state, because tech is not going to tech from large measure, not prior to Tesla, has already left Northern California. There's a bunch of rich venture capitalists there, but all major a lot of the new innovation is not coming from there; it's coming from other places. So if we lose the entertainment industry and Gavin doesn't do what Paulie and Paul are talking about, we're going to have economic devastation where you're just going to have a whole bunch of Mexicans and white folks and people of all kinds of different backgrounds that are going to be it's going to be a consumer class, and there's not going to be, the vibrant energy that once gave California the fuel it needed to become great, because entertainment industry, in large measure, is what made that state in the beginning.
Right. And that's what I was going to get to, is how the reason I think Trump is doing this, and I think you guys are right, I don't think he's necessarily going to do this so much as it is to light a fire under Newsom's ass. I think that's what this is really all about.
He really needs to light a giant fire.
I think that's what this is his basic threat, saying, if you don't change something, this is what I'm going to do. Because you guys are 100% right. Newsom has made it so impossible to make a movie in Hollywood. It is insane. And I think that's what this is all directed towards. Because notice how Trump has done this. He doesn't really give a shit what a state does on its own level, but he does care about the type of businesses that affect the rest of the country, right? Like the car industry, the power, the power infrastructure, this kind of a thing, certain immigration, things like that. That's what he cares about the most. And I think that's what he's doing here. I don't really think he's going to implement anything right away, but just like the other tariffs, I think that he was doing this just to get people to pay attention, especially Newsom, to wake up and go, okay, I have to fucking change what I'm doing or this is going to happen. And I think he means it. I do think he means the threat, but I think it's more or less a threat at this point. He's basically dad in the car going, if you kids don't fucking shut up and sit down, I'm going to turn this car around and we're going to head home right now. It's technically an empty threat, but if you keep fucking around, you don't want to test dad. He might actually turn the car around.
I like that analysis. I didn't hear you when you said that earlier. If you did, that is a great.
There are so many small things Trump could be doing that would be better for the economy. One of them is to, this is going to be weird to say for all the people who want to make sure that the planet does not die from the choking fumes of cars, is that the regulations on cars have been punitive. The car manufacturers actually got their engines, their ICE engines, internal combustion engines, up to 85% efficiency. And then the government put regulations on, and I won't get into the details because my son's a mechanic and he can tell you the details, is trying to squeeze another 5%, has created, and if you know what's happening with cars, this extra 5 or 10% they've tried to squeeze out of the car industry has created a litany of unreliable engines. Cars are lousier now because the government just couldn't accept the fact that technology could not take, they couldn't take the tech. They were demanding more technological advance, but as in every single case, you get past the point of no return, and you now have the worst of all worlds. So, they need to take DEF out of diesel cars and trucks are breaking down constantly on their cross-country trips because of these stupid regulations that they've put on, and the cars are polluting more. They're actually doing worse. They're inefficient. They're dying. And that's, again, I don't want to get into the details of it, but there's other things that Trump would be concentrating on.
Moral of the story, do not buy a new car. Buy a car that's 10 years old because they were better then.
Correct.
Yeah, because that's like the thing. With technical innovation, you get to a certain point. And with cars, with our technology and paradigm, we came as far as it was possible to come about 10 years old, and now we're in a state of decline due to regulation.
Yeah, I mean, look at the BMWs with the plastic thermostats that are, in the middle of the cylinders. They're blowing up constantly. So we had a really good, nice spot where engines were efficient, reliable, and the governments just could not leave well enough alone because nobody there really understands what this technology is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have a 10-year-old car, and I do not want a new one until I can get a Tesla Cybertruck, but I want it to run on diesel. And until it does, I'm not getting one.
So anyways, this is an interesting thing. We'll see how it pans out. I mean, Trump was already responsible for the loss of the Conservative Party in Canada, but,
Wow.
Yeah, well,
Wah.
Are you crying or are you asking me
on
why?
Canadians' own heads be it, I
Wah.
think. But yeah, as a Norwegian, I'm no one to speak.
Wah.
Well, and I don't disagree with you, Paul, that there probably isn't many a thing that Trump couldn't be worried about before this, and I'm sure there are things that he is. I think, like I said, I think that he's just throwing this out there as
It's a show trial. It's nice. It's
kind of a thing that's just to kind of poke Newsom a bit, and you know he is addressing this stuff. And what I like about it is he's actually saying the thing that we have been saying for years that nobody else will acknowledge, right? That big fat pink elephant that's been sitting in the middle of the goddamn room all this time, that we're going, but there's a pink elephant here, and everybody else is going, yeah, but COVID and woke and this and that and the other. And it's like, no. This right here, this pink elephant in the middle of the room, we need to address this thing right here. And that's finally we got somebody else besides us saying it. And I get it, it's Trump. It's not going to mean so much to a lot of people, but that's where I'm encouraged by Paulie, what Paulie's been saying, and that is behind the scenes, there are a lot of people who are going, please save us, Trump. And we knew this. We reported on this when there was that right after Trump won, and there was that big meeting at Mar-a-Lago where, you know, Bob Iger was there and Bezos and all these other people that were rubbing shoulders with him. And we're like, and a lot of other people are like, what? Yeah, because they know where they're at right now. This industry is fucked. Like,
yeah, and Georgia and New Mexico love this. This isn't helping Hollywood.
No.
Georgia is, they're going, wow, this is fantastic.
You mean California, Los Angeles. It's helping Hollywood.
Yeah, it's not helping California. Yeah, I guess it helps Hollywood a little bit, but Hollywood's in California. Oh, I see what you mean. Hollywood is a business that doesn't care where they do their business. Is that what you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely. They don't give a shit.
I agree with you, Paulie.
And and all my comments are directed about the people who live and work in the greater Los Angeles area. That's why I'm hot. I mean, it's where I was born. It's where I had an office for a number of years. And even though I give California and Southern California in particular a lot of shit, most of it is due to the resentment and anger I feel for watching California be mismanaged into oblivion.
The people there are,
in other words, it comes from a place of love. It's tough love.
The people there are great.
This clip was taken from Midnight's Edge in the Morning, which streams live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Midnight's Edge main channel. There, you can send in your live questions and comments before clips and full stream replays are uploaded to Midnight's Edge live archives. We are also on Twitter, Rumble, Odyssey, and Facebook, so smash that like, help share, subscribe, and join us.